Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Live around the world on the internet at michaeldukeshow.com and across the great state of Alaska on this your favorite radio station and or FM translator. Hello, my friends. How are you on this beautiful Tuesday edition of the big radio program? I'd be doing this from bed today if I could, but it's just not happening. We're here, ready to go, ready to rock and roll. We have to do the weekly deep dive, the top three. The big three topics that are important to us. Brad Keithley from Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets brings us on board to talk about it today. We're going to dive into it with him here in just a moment. In hour two, I'm going to attempt to recap with some of my thoughts. We'll see how I stumble through that, and we'll go on from there. And then, of course, as always on Tuesday, we'll finish up with a note of positivity with Chris Story, the man from Homer. It's going to be fun stuff. The rest of the week, we're continuing our discussions with local candidates and others. We're going to be talking. On Wednesday. That's tomorrow, I believe, with Maxwell Sumner, who's going to be joining us, and then after that, we're going to be talking with Laura Reinbold, Dr. Ryan Cole, and Michael Ashley, who are all coming to the Break Free with Knowledge Personal Freedom Annual Conference in Anchorage on the 11th. They're all going to come on and speak with us on Wednesday in hour two, give us a little bit of some info on all the things they're going to be talking about. And then other candidates on Thursday include Gail Klaus and John Mink from down here on the peninsula. As well as we continue our local candidates stuff. I also got Jacob Sullum from Reason Magazine's new book in the mail, and I was hoping to be able to get a chance to read some of it today. We'll see how that goes. His new book called Beyond Control, which is about gun control, and maybe we'll have him on the program on Friday. We'll see how things are. We'll see how things are going on that. All right. That being said, let's get down to it. We got stuff to do, stuff and things. We got people to talk about and stuff to make happen. Let's get started with Brad Keithley from Alaskans for Sustainable Budget. Hey, stop laughing at me, man. It's just one of those things. Stop laughing. Brad Keithley joins us.
Have you ever said, Terry, you're on today?
Yeah, no, I've never said, Terry, you're on today. There has, in the 7 years that I've been broadcasting this show on the internet, and of course, I can count the number of times that I called in sick to the show on 3 fingers, where I was so sick that I could literally not do the show. And I'm not there yet, but I definitely am a little bit upside down today as far as on the under the weather situation. So, but we're here. We've got you, and you're going to help me. You're going to help me walk through today. And if I fall out of the chair sometime in the show, just take over, Brad. It'll be fine. All right. So we're gonna dive into it today. We got 3 topics, and each one is better than the last as far as I'm concerned. So let's start off with the Alaska media. You know, I've had a lot of criticisms for the media in the state of Alaska, primarily about how there's not any real investigative kind of aspect to it. It's just like, let me re-summarize this press release and put it out as a news story, and not really a lot of balance on both sides. But this one, On the PFD, your comment is the Alaska media completely whiffs this story. Give me the rundown here, Brad. What are we talking about?
Well, I've read all of the stories that have been published in the state, I think, because I read a broad selection of newspaper of websites and articles and stuff, news sources.
Newspapers, you old man, you. Newspapers.
Yeah, that's about what I said. News sources, news sites. There we go. And I've read all of the stories, and none of them has what to me is the real PFD story. All of them sort of regurgitate the release from the Dunleavy administration of $1,000 PFD is going to be in your bank accounts or released to you or in the mail or whatever, however you receive it, as of the first part of October. All of them focus on the $1,000 as the story. You're going to get $1,000. None of them focus on what happened to the other $2,700. None of them focus on this is what the statute says, still says after all these years. This is what the statute says the PFD is. This is what the statute says that Alaskans' share of the commonly owned wealth, individual Alaskans' share of the commonly owned wealth is. None of them start with that, which would be about 37.5 right now this year. None of them start with that and progress on to how that divides out. That you get 1,000 of that the remaining 2,700 or so was withheld, diverted to government, what one ICER economist has called taxed to the government, and then spent by the government. And what it was spent on, none of them focus on what it was spent on, and none of them focus on who the beneficiary of that $2,700 tax truly is, who the true beneficiaries are. And the true beneficiaries are those who would otherwise have paid to fill that hole, that gap, that deficit in the state budget, that otherwise would have paid to fill that hole had the PFD not been taxed and diverted. And that's largely the top 20%, the oil companies and non-resident industries, all of whom, two of whom, the oil companies and the top 20% escape with paying only a small share of that. Non-residents escape with paying nothing of that. That's the story. The story ends sort of with how much do you get? The story begins with how much were you supposed to get? How much does the statute say that you're supposed to get? How much is supposed to, of the Alaska's commonly owned wealth, is supposed to go into individual Alaskans' pockets? And then what happened to that $3,750? What happened to that amount? How did it get divided up between what actually made it to your pockets and what was withheld, diverted, and sent elsewhere? If Alaskans knew that story, Alaska government would be a lot different. If Alaskans knew the story that they were taxed $2,700, falling hardest on middle and lower income Alaska families, if Alaskans knew they were taxed for 2/3 of the amount that they were owed, if they knew they were taxed for that amount that they were owed, that it was withheld, diverted to government, spent on government in lieu of, and the beneficiaries are those who didn't get taxed in order to pay for that share of government. If Alaskans knew that story, there would be a big pushback on government. There would be a big pushback on legislators who are doing that. There would be a big pushback on the governor for allowing it to go forward without using additional powers like vetoing the entire budget until they get it right. There would be a big pushback on the governor. There would be the kind of response that some say they want in terms of pressure on holding and and reducing spending. But legislators are getting off scot-free from that responsibility. The governor's getting off scot-free because the story being told Alaskans is only the back end of the story, the last step of the story. which is they get $1,000. The story is go to the beginning of the story, which is the full statutory amount that's still in the statute, and then break out what's going on with that full statutory amount and focus on who the beneficiaries of that statutory amount are. That's the story that should be told.
Well, and this is, again, going back to what I was saying, which is my complaint about the news media in Alaska is that there is no deeper dive on most of this stuff. It's very rare that you'll see an article that isn't just, as you said, a paraphrase. It's like they dropped the governor's press release into ChatGPT and just, rewrote it. Or the same thing happens when it's something coming out of the legislature. The Senate majority, the House majority puts out a press release. They paraphrase the press release. That's the answer. There is no give and take. There's very little. If they have a comment from the other side, it's a one paragraph or one sentence, little rebuttal on anything. And there's no deeper dive onto where is the money. As you said, with $3,700, right? That's what the PFD should have been, $3,750, something like that. So that means that they're taking almost 3/4 of the dividend to then pay for government. And you're right, people just aren't paying attention. They're so busy making a living and doing their thing that they're just not really paying attention as to why am I not getting the PFD, and not putting in the context of you're essentially being taxed at this point.
Yeah, and to some degree, Michael, I blame legislators also, conservative legislators as well, for not telling that story. I mean, some of them vote against it, so they've got a good story to tell. I voted against it because you're being taxed, and you're being taxed way too heavily, and you're being taxed unfairly in the sense that you're paying a tax. You middle and lower income Alaska families are paying the tax, instead of oil companies and non-residents and the top 20% chipping in as well. The burden is falling on you. It's a deeply regressive tax. You're paying essentially 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 to 6 times more than what the top 20% is paying. You're paying infinitely more than what non-residents are paying. It's an unfair tax. Legislators who vote against it have that story that they could tell, but they're not. As far as I can tell, I mean, it's certainly not making the news media. There's no, on the other hand, Senator or Representative thus and so said this. And so we're missing the story altogether. I mean, it's sort of like we've fallen into, okay, it's another, legislature makes up a number, bam, that's the number, that's the story, not what happened from the statutory amount that's still on the books, never been amended. Not starting at that amount, and what happened to those dollars is just boom. This is the dollars you get. Be happy, go on your way. Don't ask any more. Don't ask any questions. And that's, we're not going to get Alaska government reined in. We're not going to get fairness in our taxation. We're not going to get a focus on resources that are being left behind with the oil companies, or resources that are being left behind with the Permanent Fund Corporation in terms of not maximizing the return. We're not going to get a focus on that as long as the story is you just get this, don't ask what happened to the rest of it, and keep on going and being happy. If we had the full story, this is the statutory amount, this is what the statute says your individual share of Alaska's commonly held wealth is this year. And this is what government took out of it. And these are the beneficiaries. Until we have that story, we're not going to get the push on government spending or on other sources of revenue that we need to make those happen.
I'm shocked that they just don't even, the simplest thing would have been to mention that the statutory amount would have been X, 3,700, 3,750, whatever. That would have at least been, I guess a little more honest on it, but here we are, just sitting around, just be happy with what you get, kind of is the answer that we're hearing right now.
And it's a complete whiff all the way through the media, all the way through to must read. It's a complete whiff. None of them do that story. None of them start at the beginning and do the analysis to the end. All of them just start at the end and publish the end. And you know what? It's just shocking to me, truly, that they're just all ignoring that story, all missing the story, all missing the impact on Alaskans, middle and lower income Alaska families, by not telling the full story.
Well, that's the good way to start. Let's start off with a bang, Brad. Number one of the weekly top three, which leads us over to number two. We're going to get into that here in just a second. I'm already depressed. All right, we're going to continue here in just a moment. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. We'll be back with more right after this. Don't go anywhere. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio.
If you missed the show, you can listen to it on your time with Dukes On Demand. Oh, and it's free. Like America used to be. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Okay, we're in the break right now. I think that's the goal of Brad. Depress Dukes as much as possible so that he's angry for Chris' story. Really? I just, Brad takes a lot of heat for that. I don't know why. Harold, I can't disagree with you more. He says you can't associate the distribution of the wealth of the state's resources with the income of Alaskans. It's not an association. He's pointing out that it is the lowest income Alaskans who are paying a disproportionate share of the cost of the state government by having the PFD taxed. That's not, you're the one that keeps banging on legislators when they come in for not supporting a full PFD, and then you bang on Brad for talking about how we should get a full PFD. You are a dichotomy wrapped up in an enigma.
No, it's consistent. It's a consistent theme. It's banging. It's banging on anybody.
What's that, Brad? I'm sorry. Go ahead. I had you muted. It's
a consistent theme. It's just banging on whoever's the talking head at the moment.
Sure, that's true. It's Jeffrey says reporters are a product of a modern education system. I mean, I don't know what they're teaching in reporter school these days, journalism school. But it obviously doesn't appear to be any kind of deeper analytical thought. Maybe it's a class in ChatGPT these days. I don't know.
There is investigative reporting. I mean, the whole thing about the delayed payments for SNAP and the delayed qualifications for SNAP and the delayed Medicaid payments, all of that was investigative reporting. It certainly wasn't the state putting out press releases saying, "Hey, look at how delayed we are." It's selective investigative reporting. It's on things that they want focus on, which is whatever they select. But if you're going to do that, if you're going to worry about middle and lower income Alaska families, worry about them. If you're going to worry about their income levels, worry about it, and focus on something that is significantly impacting those, which is, the taxing and diversion of the PFD.
It's interesting to watch this, like you said, especially when they find a story that they're hot and heavy on, or something that I think feeds into their particular political narrative. Then, like you said, then they dig deep into the thing. Otherwise, it's all business as usual. It's just business as usual, and that's unfortunate. That is absolutely unfortunate for sure. Let's see. Remember the days of 60 Minutes. Well, yeah. I mean, but even they have gotten. I mean, I think it's pretty obvious that there is definitely a political slant to the journalism class, to the journalistic class in this country these days. I think for the most part, the vast majority of them seem to be moving to a specific narrative, which is government is good, and we should just believe in all that, right? Well,
and there you go. And we should have more of it, which is the stories on SNAP and and on Medicaid. We're not getting enough of it. We need more of that. We need more government. But this is a story about, I mean, I'm not saying, I've never said that we shouldn't have government. What I've been saying is who should pay for government, and we should do it fairly, and we should do it equitably, and we should do it in accordance with the statutes. We should do it in accordance with the rule of law. I mean, this last week, we've seen a lot about, the breakdown in American society and where did it all begin? Well, part of it begins when your state legislatures and your Congress and president, but part of it begins when the state legislatures don't follow the law. When they pass a statute, the government assigns it, you have years and years and years of following the statute, and all of a sudden some legislature decides, well, some governor, in the case of Walker, and then legislatures subsequently say, we don't have to follow that law. We're gonna do something else. That is where the breakdown of society starts, when those who we expect to set the laws, to follow the laws, when they stop doing that.
Yeah.
And they start going off in their own ad hoc directions.
Yeah.
And if you want to talk about where we're going wrong, I think the PFD is a great story about where we're going wrong.
All right. We're about to rejoin the radio. Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets, the weekly top 3. Heaven help me. It's only 90 minutes left. Here we go. The Michael Duke Show.
The Michael Duke Show. Seriously humorous with a pinch of intellect. Sorry. That is humorous. Here's Michael Dukes.
All right, we're continuing now. Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets, the weekly top 3. Well, Brad, the Alaska Renaissance doesn't mean what we think it. You keep using that phrase. I don't think it means what you think it means. The Alaska Renaissance. I think we may have been told something that was slightly incorrect. What do we got here? Hit me with the details.
Well, Eric Stone in Alaska Public Media has a story that captured my attention when I saw the headline. The headline is, "What does a North Slope Renaissance mean for Alaska's state budget?" And it picks up on the theme of this year's AOGA conference, the Alaska Oil and Gas Association conference, where producer after producer got up and trade association after trade association got up and said, we're having a renaissance on the North Slope. We're having all this investment. We're having all this development. We're having all this new areas being identified and developed. The federal One Big Beautiful Act is going to increase that. It opens new lands. We're having a true renaissance, and that we're having all this drilling up here. And Eric Stone asked the question in this article, what does the North Slope Renaissance mean for Alaska's state budget? And he had two sources for this in the story. One was Bert Stedman, and the other was Bill Wilikowski. Stedman said, it means great things. We're getting all this additional revenue, and we're going to be, it's not enough yet. We're not out of the woods of the deficits we've been running, but we're getting all this additional revenue, and I think it's even going to get better over the next 10 years. Wilikowski said something different. But here's what's really going on. Alaskans in 2013 and 2014, when we had SB 21 up, were told this. They were told, if you agree to reduce production taxes from the levels they were at ACES, we're going to attract additional investment. We're going to attract additional development of fields, and we're going to attract additional production. And you Alaskans are going to benefit from that, because as production goes up, so will state revenues. They'll ride on up, ride on up with production. So you're making an investment. You Alaskans are making an investment by agreeing to reduce production taxes from the levels they are in exchange for essentially co-investing. That reduction will be a co-investment with producers to bring in new investment and to bring in new production and to as a result increase revenues. That's not what's happened. What's happened is Alaskans agreed to reduce production taxes. Producers did make investments. Producers are developing new fields. Production levels are going up. They're going up significantly. But the Alaskans' share, the budget share, isn't moving. The royalties, some claim, oh, royalties are going up. When you look at it in gross, when you take into account the revenue decline or the production decline from old fields and the production increases coming from new fields, state royalties are staying the same across the next 10 years. They aren't going up. They aren't following production increases. And a lot of that is because those production increases are coming from federal lands. Projected production increases are coming from federal lands. All right. So what's Alaskans' share from federal lands? What should Alaska be getting from federal lands? And the answer to that is production taxes. So going back to 2013, 2014, if you make this investment by reducing production taxes, we'll have investment, production will go up, and your revenue stream from production taxes will go up. Doesn't matter in that case if it's from federal lands or state lands, because production taxes apply to both. What's happening with production taxes? They're going down. They are not only not staying the same, they're certainly not going up proportionately to the increase in production in production volumes. They're going down over the next 10 years. And DOR recently published a study of two of the fields, Willow and Pikka, that allowed us to take a look at what happens beyond the 10-year period. And they continue going down over the next 10 years because we continue to have new investment that drives state credits to production taxes that continue to keep production taxes down. We don't reach a point at which production taxes start going up. Not even a delayed point. We don't reach a point at which production taxes start going up, because by the time production gets to the point, the field production gets to the point where the taxes come off, where taxes reapply, where the credits come off, the fields are in decline. And so the revenues, yes, the percent of revenue starts going up. The percent of production tax the realized production tax starts going up, but the fields are in decline, production's in decline, so the revenues keep going down. Even though the percentage goes up, the revenues keep going down. So the answer to this question, what does a North Slope Renaissance mean for Alaska state budget? It means bad things. It means that Alaskans aren't sharing in the promise made in 2013 and 2014. And I was one of those making the promise back then. Doesn't mean they're sharing in the promise of 2013 and 2014, that as investments are made, as production increases, production tax revenues, state budget revenues will go up. Bert is trying to say, oh, well, revenues are going to go up because we're getting revenues from these new fields. But when you look at, we're getting royalty from these new fields, state fields. But when you look at the overall, when you look at the combination of the production decline in old fields and offset by, and the production increase in new fields, it's staying level. And production tax from state lands, which is where the only place we get royalties from state lands are staying level. Bert wants you to focus. It's sort of like a magic trick, right? It's sort of like, don't look over here. Don't look over here. Look at my hand here. Look at my hand here. Look, dollars are going up. Dollars are going up. Well, look at both hands and dollars aren't going up. And when you look at production taxes, dollars are actually going down. So the North Slope Renaissance means great things for the oil companies, means great things for production volumes, means great things for development, means great things for the bottom line of the oil companies. But it means that Alaskans aren't getting what they were promised in 2013 and 2014. And I think that's a huge story that Eric Stone completely misses.
Well, I mean, and I think, you got to kind of give credit where credit's due. Wilikowski, who I disagree with almost everything, he did say that he'd like to prevent oil. He's talking about the oil taxes like you were talking about. He said he'd like to prevent companies from deducting investments on federal land like Willow from state taxes they owe on other projects. He said, why should we subsidize that? Why should the state of Alaska be subsidizing hundreds of millions to potentially billions of dollars for production, for exploration costs and drilling, for which we get zero royalties, for which we get very little in production tax? I mean, he's making the same point. Good for him. this is what we should be talking about. With production going up, we should not be seeing our coffers then running dry because we're receiving less and less. And that's what you projected. You showed it on paper. Here it was in the future.
Yeah, exactly right. Wielechowski, Wielechowski to me is being too simplistic. You cannot discriminate against production from federal lands. Your production tax cannot be set up to charge production from federal lands more production tax than from state lands. You have to treat production from federal lands in the same manner that you treat production from state lands. Part of what Wielechowski is saying, the broad sense of what Bill's trying to create is, we should not be giving the federal lands the benefit of these credits, and it's not that simple. It's what is simple. What is the simple thing is we're not getting what we were promised in 2013 and 2014. We're not getting a share of the benefit as production rises in terms of state revenues. That's the thing that we need to focus on. Very simple. Production increases, Alaska state revenue should increase. That's not what's happening.
But we can't get this is what kills me, is we can't get anybody on the Republican side to even buy into a conversation on changing oil taxes. I mean, they don't even want to discuss it. I mean, we talk about, we bang on the Democrats and the bigger government folks in so many ways on this program. I mean, Democrats and Republicans. But even the business as usual crowd doesn't want to touch the oil taxation discussion, even though it would put more money in their coffers to be able to spend. But they just don't even want to talk about it.
No, and the oil companies have got them scared by saying, we'll invest our money someplace else if you change oil taxes into Alaska. That's not what would happen. If Alaska revenues went up as a share of increased revenues from increased production, as a share, then the oil companies could the economics of the oil companies would still work. What's happened is the way the credits in SB 21 are implementing during this period of time is one credit is piling on top of another credit on top of another credit to give oil companies super returns from their investment during this period of time. And they're telling Alaskans, wait for 7 years till the GVR exclusion expires, or wait. The problem is, as you continue to develop through that time, you continue running new GVR, you continue to run new deductions that are being developed, and Alaska's wait is out there like 20, 30 years before these revenues show up. And in that case, production's on decline. So yes, the percentage increases, the percentage of our share of the revenues increases at that point. But when production's on decline, and you see this in the DOR, Willow, and Pikka studies, when production's on decline, even though the percentage is increasing, the revenue is decreasing because production volumes are falling so fast.
So we're on the lose-lose end of the lollipop is what you're saying, essentially. There is no upside even in the 20 and 30-year forecast, because by that time, while the percentages are higher, the production is lower, meaning we have a net less take anyway at the other end.
Yep. So it's not just about time value money. It's not just the delay. It's the impact of the delay against the production curve decline. That is, Alaskans just never catch up.
Well, I mean,
we never achieve the goal of 2013, 2014. As production increases, state revenues will increase.
And I think you hit on it. Melissa comments in the chat room. She says they think the oil companies will leave if we change it. Brad's correct. It's a fear tactic, because that's what we keep hearing. Well, if you change it, they'll just take their ball and their bat and they'll go home. Well, no, that's our ball and bat. We own the diamond. We own the field. We own the ball and the bat. If they want to go play somewhere else, okay, somebody else will step in, but they're not going to do that. That's the fear. That's the tactic, right, that we keep hearing.
Yeah. And their economics are overachieving. I mean, when you look at the oil company economics, they are developing superior returns, excess returns, whatever word you want to use, excess returns. Let's land on excess. They're developing excess returns because we're deferring Alaska's share for so long.
Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. The weekly top 3 continues. We're going to go. We got one more. I mean, I wish we had an answer to this. I mean, we do have an answer to this, but nobody wants to talk about it. I think that's the thing. We should be re-examining our oil taxation. And maybe we should just set it so that every 10 years we re-examine the oil tax. Maybe that should be something that should be set in there. I don't know. We'll continue. Brad Keithley, our guest. The weekly top 3 continues. Back with more. The Michael Dukes Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio.
Listened to by more staffers in Juneau than any other show because their bosses told them to. And after what they just heard, oh man, they're going to be pissed.
You're a bad, bad man.
The Michael Dukes Show.
All right, let's catch some comments here in the chat room. David says, maybe there's an analogy between higher oil production, lower state revenue, and the more K-12 spending, lower student achievement. I mean, you're reaching there. I mean, I can see what you're trying to do there, but you're reaching. How much, David says, Brad, how much is Alaska charging for transporting the oil? Does the state have a play in that? I mean, there is a service company and there is a cost to doing that, but I don't think that that's affecting it that badly. Do you, Brad?
No. So Alaska is basically, or TAPS charges are basically cost of service. They're basically the cost of service divided by volume is the per unit TAPS charge. There's no extra profit built in there. There's no sub profit built in there. It's just the whatever your cost is divided by volume, and that's the per unit cost. So, yeah, Alaska. I mean, the deductions play a role in the sense that they reduce the gross revenue, the market revenue that the producer receives. But I mean, that's always been the case. We've always known that, and Alaska's charges haven't changed that much over the years. In fact, as a share of price. As a share of value, they've declined because they've remained relatively constant, but the value of oil has gone up. The price of oil has gone up over the decade. So the percentage impact of Alaska has declined.
Brian just says, if they left, if the producers, they'll just start selling it off to the native corps or let the state of Alaska have it so we can start our own oil company with Bert as the CEO. Oh man, please don't give them any, let's not give them any ideas for sure. Let me go back. Go ahead.
Alaska. I mean, Alaska is a good place to invest. They're investing here because it's a good place to invest. We've just created a system in which they're getting even more on that investment than they would require, than their economics require in order to keep the investment going. We are giving them the state's share of production tax, the state's upside of this increased production they're generating. We're giving it to them, and to the federal government through the federal income tax. We're giving it to them instead of retaining it for ourselves, as we said we would benefit in 2013 and 2014
as resource owners, right? Which is what we have to consider. That every time we look at that, we have to remember that we are the resource owners. And so we need to be, the legislature is supposed to be looking out for us. I think Frank asks a valid question that many Alaskans who aren't privy or haven't seen the ins and outs of this specifically. Frank says, why should the state subsidize anything is the question. Why, Brad?
Well, you want the investment here, and Alaska is an expensive place to invest, and Alaska is a risky place to invest. And Alaska also has, the geopolitical risks, the risks of changes in regulatory regimes that changes your access to land and changes the restrictions you have on development. So you want to incentivize development in Alaska. It's more risky, more costly than, say, West Texas. So there is a benefit to the state of incentivizing that development. The problem is we were told one thing in 2013 and 2014 about what we were doing. We were going to incentivize it. We were going to incentivize investment by reducing the production tax level from under ACES. We were going to incentivize that production. And then when that production took off, we were going to benefit from it by increases in state revenues. That's not happening. So there's a reason to incentivize the development, but the reason is you get the benefit of those incentives, of that development once it occurs. And it's the back end of that we're not getting.
Yeah, and it's interesting to see how again, they don't want to address this at all. I mean, what about the idea of Alaska has to examine their taxes, their tax scheme every 10 years? I mean, shouldn't we at least analyze it to say, how's it working for us, right? Yeah. And this is the problem. Remember, we talked about the extremes in state spending and everything else. They run from one side of the boat to, oh, we got so much we don't know what to do with it. Oh, now we're upside down. It's the same thing with oil taxes, right? It goes one way, oh, it's going to be so great. And then it goes the other way 100%, from ELF to ACES to SB 21 to whatever we've got. I mean, that's part of the problem, is that we keep running from one side of the boat to the other.
And that's an excellent point, Michael. And it's really a point that describes, I mean, there's been activity to try to relook at oil taxes. Brenna led the initiative in 2020, was it, when we had the last initiative on oil taxes, or 2022? It's getting my memory is getting loose in that regard. But yeah, we've had people who want to look at it. The problem is they want to run to the other side of the boat. The problem is they want to adopt a tax regime that would tend to go back to ACES, and ACES didn't work. ACES, all right, didn't get investment.
Let's get back to it. The Michael Duke Show, Common Sense Radio.
The Michael Duke Show. Not your daddy. Wait, sorry. Not your daddy? Ooh, not your daddy's talk radio. Whew. I was scared for a second. Thought we were going down. Here's Michael Dukes and the show.
Okay. We are continuing now. Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets, the weekly top 3. Final of the 3. We're up to number 3. I mean, we were trying to find solutions. But again, nobody wants to take a deeper look. Brad, we were just talking about this 10-year, the idea of taking a 10-year look at it. And we just, I mean, I'd love to do that, but we just can't get anybody to really buy in on that. But let's move into number 3. So the Santos deal with Abu Dhabi, I mean, the whole thing has fallen apart. What does that mean? Because we heard that was going to be a big, uptick and more investment and everything else for Pikka. So what does it mean now that the Santos deal has fallen apart for us?
So Santos, the backstory on this is Santos had entered into an agreement with ADNOC, the Abu Dhabi National Oil Company, for ADNOC to buy Santos. And ADNOC was doing that. Abu Dhabi was doing that really for the LNG, the Australian and Papua New Guinea and other LNG projects that Santos has. ADNOC is trying to get big in that business, in the LNG business, and viewed Santos's LNG projects as a great add to what ADNOC was putting together. And Santos has a couple of projects they've not funded yet. That the expectation was, if ADNOC came on board, or if the acquisition went forward, that ADNOC has much deeper pockets than Santos does, and ADNOC would fund those additional LNG projects that Santos has not been funding as a way of developing Santos's LNG portfolio even better, even more broadly. Pikka has always sort of been the tail end of the story. Has always been, Santos has this great oil prospect up in Alaska that it's been investing in and is expected to produce oil. That wasn't the focus of ADNOC's acquisition. And frankly, I think some insiders were speculating that in order to focus ADNOC, if the acquisition went forward, in order to focus attention on the LNG projects, which is what ADNOC was really interested in, that Pikka would be put up for sale, or something would be done with Pikka in order to allow ADNOC to keep the laser focus on Santos's LNG prospects. That deal falling, ADNOC has backed out of the deal. Santos is trying to spin it that they backed out of the deal, but ADNOC backed out of the deal. And so the question now is, and this shows up in a Alaskan news source, the TV station's website, Alaska North Slope Pikka project, Alaska impact unknown after Santos merger deal dies. Actually, Santos's focus now is going to be more on Pikka than it would have been in the combined company. As I said, ADNOC's focus was really on the LNG prospects. Pikka was sort of the tail on the dog. Without ADNOC's acquisition, Santos really has two big future stories. One is an LNG project in Australia that they're starting up in the near future that is supposed to be a big money generator. And the other story that Santos is selling about its future is Pikka. The oil prospect up in Alaska is a big deal. So in terms of corporate attention, Pikka is probably going to get more corporate attention, more corporate responsiveness going forward than it would have under the ADNOC if ADNOC had acquired Santos. The slight drawback of that is Santos won't have near the deep pockets that a combined ADNOC Santos would have had. So funding is going to be a little more scarce, Santos corporate wide, as a result of the failure of the merger. And so that may show up as Pikka approaches phase 2 or additional phases or additional drilling. Santos has prospects in additional areas outside of Pikka that it's been exploring and has put on track for development at some point. And the lack of the deep pockets that ADNOC was going to bring to that combined entity may show up in those additional investments, or it may not. I mean, if Pikka stays, if Alaska stays a central part of the Santos story, Santos isn't acquired. They're going to keep wanting to focus, as long as it's economic. They're going to keep wanting to focus on the Alaska piece of the story because that's the part that they're selling to the stock market right now. So I think in the short term, it means good things in the sense that the corporate attention that otherwise might have been diverted as a result of the acquisition, the corporate attention that otherwise might have been diverted to the LNG projects, remains focused on Pikka as one of the big deals that Santos is engaged in. Longer term, I think that's probably still a good thing because Santos will want to continue spinning that story of Alaska oil being a big part of the company's future. But the funding won't be from as deep a pocket, and so the funding may become an issue down the road.
And that of course spells some good news for Alaska in the short term. What does it mean? What does it mean long term? As you said, they're just selling this now to the stock market to keep their prices up, as this is what they're going to focus on, and this is a good potentiality. But what does it mean in the long run for the state of Alaska? Do we see more revenues? Do we see something more stable, or what do we see?
Well, that sort of goes back to the second segment, doesn't it? That we're not seeing revenues out of these development. I mean, we're seeing royalty revenues that sort of match the decline curve we have going elsewhere on the slope, so that royalties are generally staying, state production from state lands is generally staying level. So royalties are generally staying level. And so that's good in the sense that we're not falling further behind on the royalty side, but we're not seeing the addition to the state revenue stream from the production tax because of the way the production tax is structured. So it's good news in the sense that it keeps Alaska resources being developed. It keeps people busy in terms of developing those resources. It keeps additional oil development on as a prospect, and it keeps sort of replacing the royalty revenue sources that we're losing as a result of decline, but we're not anywhere near replacing the production tax revenues. And you have to go back. I mean, production tax revenues are a big deal. Back in 2024, which is the baseline that I use and others use to look at these things, in 2024, production taxes were equal. The revenues from production taxes were over 900 million, equal to royalty revenues. Royalty revenues are sort of staying level, but production taxes are going down. The consequence is that Alaska's revenue from its production is going down over time. And so the additional development of the fields, while, people hail that as additional development and isn't that great, and, additional employees and additional projects, isn't that great? The production tax piece of that development isn't showing up. So it will mean good things to Alaska in terms of the additional development. It will mean good things to Alaska if we fix the production taxes going forward, so that Alaskans share in the benefit of the increased production. But if we don't fix production taxes from a production tax standpoint, it really doesn't mean that much to the state revenue stream.
Right. 90 seconds, Brad. Let's wrap up today on the weekly top three. What did we learn today?
Well, I think basically what we've learned is the media isn't doing us a service. The media isn't telling us the full story, even on the PFD, on production taxes, and so we're sort of dealing in this information vacuum that we're being taken that the state's being taken advantage of as a result.
Well, nothing new here. Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets, the weekly top three. Thank you so much for coming on, my friend. We appreciate it. Michael,
as always, thanks for having me.
Folks, we got more coming up. We're going to be jumping into this here in just a minute. We've got my commentary, as muddled as it may be, on some of these things. Brad, what do you focus on something next week? Quickly, what's your Friday column about this week?
I'm working on what if we went to gross revenues? What if we went to a gross revenue production tax? What would that do for us? Sort of picking up on the comments Will Stapp has made. And it's sort of, all right, let's trash all this complexity that we've created, and let's go back to a simple system. What would that take, and what would that generate for us? So I'm continuing on production taxes.
It's a good question. All right, Brad Keithley, thank you. Folks, we're out of time. We got more coming up. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. Hour 2 is dead ahead. Either I miscounted or Brad was just super quick. So we ran out of time there, or had a little extra time there at the end. I mean, maybe that's the solution, Brad. Maybe just going back to the simplest instead of this multi-phased, intertwined 63 different bells and whistles and levers that need to be pulled, each one connected to another one. I mean, maybe just something simple would fix it, instead of making it so convoluted and complicated that you can't predict. That was the problem. They're predicting one things, but then all the things line up to where all of a sudden what they told us was going to happen is not going to happen because, well, I mean, the oil companies figured out how to game the system essentially. And that's good for them. That's what they're supposed to do for their shareholders, but maybe something a little more simplistic would be better.
Yeah. So gross revenues always should be the standard that even though you have a complex oil tax system, you should always look at the impact on gross revenues, because that's sort of how you judge your share, whether it's a fair share or an inadequate share, is sort of what the gross revenues are. There's a reason, if you want to incentivize a bunch of things, there's a reason to make your tax code complex, because you're incentivizing some things, you're de-incentivizing other things, and you're doing that through the tax code. There's a reason to do it, but you should always come back and look at gross revenues and see what the impact of those various tricks and tuning is doing on gross revenues. And when you look, I mean, this is sort of the proof of what the oil tax code is doing to us. When you look at gross revenues during the last decade, the last 10 years from 2014 to 2024, Alaska plus or minus got about 6.5 to 7% of gross revenues through the production tax. And you add that to what we're getting through royalty, and we were doing okay. I mean, we certainly weren't paying for the budget we were spending, but we were doing okay in terms of our share of revenues. When you look at this coming decade, we're down to like 3.5% or 3% of gross revenues, and in terms of production taxes. And we're also not getting royalty on the federal production. So you're seeing a decline. You're seeing a decline in the gross revenues. You're seeing a decline in your test of fairness, substantial decline in your test of fairness over this next decade. And that's how you know, that's how you can prove, how you can test whether the operation of oil taxes in this coming decade is producing Alaska's fair share, because it's not producing the share it produced even in the last decade. So one way to sort of just work through all that is to say, okay, forget all that. Forget all the complexity. Forget all the incentives. Forget all the bells and whistles we tried to build into this thing to incentivize this activity as opposed to that activity. Forget all that. Let's just go back to the basic test of gross revenues as a fairness test, and look at how that would impact state revenues, and look how it would impact producers. And that is to say, look, instead of all these bells and whistles we build on, let's just go back to the last decade and let's set a gross revenues, let's base production taxes on gross revenues, and match the last decade in what we're getting out of that. And I think that's a good test. Now, some people are going to say, well, you still need bells and whistles. All right. If you need bells and whistles, you always have to come back and prove that those bells and whistles match your fair share as determined on a gross revenues basis, as a share of gross revenues. And you have to prove that those bells and whistles aren't going to result in what we're seeing in this next 10-year period, which is a depression of the state's take below its fair share of gross revenues. So I'm going to go back and look at that and look at gross revenues and what that would do. Right. And it may be that's the answer to all this, because what we're doing now sure as hell ain't working out.
You may need a new hobby, Brad. I'm just saying. You may need a new hobby. Frank kind of bottom lines it for us, though. He goes, adjusting the tax structure is too much. The simplest thing is just taking the permanent fund. But I mean, that's essentially what they've been doing. They don't want to penalize the donor class, right? They don't want to penalize those guys. So the simplest thing is just take the permanent fund. So that's kind of what's happening right now with this. Instead of taking our fair share and doing, for our own resources, it's just easier to take the permanent fund. All right, Brad, final thoughts for today, my friend. Hit me with it.
Well, here's, I guess, the ultimate final thought. Are we going to get a candidate for governor? Are we going to get candidates for legislature that think about these things and talk about these things? Are we going to get candidates for governor that recognize that we're not getting our fair share on a gross revenues basis? We're not getting our fair share out of the increased production that's going on. Are we going to get candidates that recognize that the permanent fund cuts in the permanent fund dividend is just a tax on middle and lower income Alaska families, and we have to have a fairer, more equitable way? If we're going to have run these huge budget deficits, we're going to have a fairer, more equitable way of filling those deficits. Are we going to get candidates that recognize that? And frankly, I guess what we're doing on the show is we're trying to educate those who are candidates or want to be candidates or legislators or want to be legislators or candidates for governor, educate them on what the issues are and what they should be talking about. They aren't talking about it yet. Maybe they won't, in which event we're doomed. But that's really the ultimate question. Are we going to get candidates that start talking about these things?
I think it's a valid question, and I appreciate you asking those questions over and over and over again, Brad. Thank you so much for coming on board. It's good to talk with you, my friend. We'll talk to you again soon.
Michael, as always, thanks for having me.
All right, folks, we got more coming up. Hour 2 is dead ahead. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Let's get to it.
Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Live around the world on the internet at michaeldukeshow.com and across the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station and or FM translator. Hello, my friends. Welcome to the program. And thank you for coming on board for Tuesday. This is the Tuesday edition of the Big Radio Show. And we're getting ready. At the end of this hour, we'll have Chris Story on board, who will help us navigate the world of positivity. That's what it's going to be, positivity. And we'll bring him on here in just a little bit to give us our weekly life coaching lesson, et cetera, et cetera. Before we get to that, though, I guess we just finished up with Brad Keithley for Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. And I've got a few things that I'd like to say and talk about in regards to this. Now, full disclosure, a little bit under the weather today, and so if I ramble a bit, you'll have to forgive me. But looking at this overall, I'm just so frustrated with this, with several parts. We're going to start off with Brad's number one, which is the fact that the news media in the state of Alaska has completely, he said, has, whiffed it as far as the stories coming around from on the PFD. And anybody who's been paying attention to this, this is it's no secret that the news media is just not doing a great job in Alaska. And I'm talking about the mainstream press. The mainstream press out there, where they all parrot the same. And Brad's right. If you look at the stories, if you go out there and look at the news stories, you'll see that they all are essentially saying the same thing, which is, oh, hey, on October the 2nd, you'll all get your checks in the mail, and it'll all be fine, and everything's going to be great. And that's it. I mean, every news outlet, including Must Read, doesn't dive into the deeper story, which is, okay, great. We all got $1,000 PFD, which again, I'm going to go on record and say that I believe that this will probably be the last time we get a substantive PFD. $1,000 is still substantive. I would not be surprised. I would not be surprised if we had no PFD in the future. I think that if we get one this next year, I think if we do get one this next year, that it will probably be it might be in the $300 range. And only that's because they want to keep the idea of the permanent fund alive. They don't really want to focus on the fact that they would have to take the whole permanent, because there would be some heat. If they decide that they need to take, that they need to take if they eliminated the permanent fund, let's just put it that way, then there might be some pushback. People would say, well, wait, you've been telling us that if we, the question of taxes or a PFD, you've been giving us this dichotomous choice, and we just, we and now you're saying you're going to take the PFD, and there will be taxes. I mean, I think that with a $2 billion deficit, I think that that's inevitable. I just don't see how they pull us out of this tailspin without taking the PFD and then having to institute some form of tax on top of it. I don't see how it works. I don't see how else it will. I just don't see how else it plays out. Because again, even if you take the full PFD at this point, if you take all of the PFD, I guess I should say, the remaining $1,000, you still don't come anywhere near filling the gap or plugging the hole. I mean, if you have a $2 billion deficit and you take the $1,000 PFD from the 660,000 applicants for the PFD, that's only $660 million, right? It's only 600. Just do the math. What does that leave us with? It leaves us with nearly $1.5 billion hole still in the budget. Now, they may be able to fill that for 1 year from the CBR, and maybe if they stretch it, maybe even 2 years. Again, assuming that they've taken the full PFD. But after that, there's no other choices. There's no other ways to go. And instead of digging deeper and looking into the PFD to say, well, this is what it should have been, and this is what it is, and this is where the money went, and doing some due diligence and going into this, instead of doing any of that, again, just basically parroting what the government press release is instead is, I mean, that's just, it's so weak sauce for the news media. Now, Brad makes a good point when he said, because I was complaining about this, and he makes a valid point when he said, well, when it's something that they are interested in or they care about or is important to them, i.e. the food stamp backlog or something else, then they're all about digging deep and getting into the nitty-gritty and doing the investigative journalism. But other than that, they're go along to get along. And it's really a shame that we can't get a deeper dive into, well, the permanent fund, you're going to get $1,000 in October, but it was 3,700 and change, whatever the real number is. 3,700 is the estimate right now, I guess 3,750. But where did that other nearly 3/4 of your dividend go? What did they do with it? And what we're seeing is that nobody really wants to talk about that. Nobody wants to talk about the size and scope of government. Nobody wants to talk about the fact that we've got this kind of perfect storm of spending continues to increase. The size and scope, we've got new government, we got new employee contracts that are coming up and everything else. We just added to the BSA, the base student allocation. So that's a permanent increase. We've got all these increases going on in government. And yet, we're talking about, Pikka and oil production and the decline of production tax and royalties and everything else. We've got kind of this perfect storm going on where we're going to see less and less money in the future. And at the same time, we're continuing to grow government. And this whole thing also, again, might be that setup for what we were talking about in the past, which was this combining of the two funds the earnings reserve and the corpus of the fund for the permanent fund itself, to where that will be, again, part of their argument to say, well, we really need to, because we're just not going to have enough money in the ERA to draw what we need to draw. Therefore, we need access to the corpus of the fund to therefore, and I can already see how they're going to try and sell this to people, that because it's worked so well. The question will be, do you want a tax, or do you want a corpus protected, or do you want the corpus protected? Now, they may not put it exactly like that, but essentially the argument will be, will you allow us to combine the funds, or do you want us to tax you? And of course, because that's money that most Alaskans never see, they don't really consider it, they're not really thinking about it. I think that there'll probably be a lot of Alaskans who don't understand the value of the permanent fund itself, the corpus of the fund, the earnings potential, and who didn't really quite honestly see the value of the permanent fund other than free money, that they would much rather have that go away, not understanding the long-term consequences of it. They would much rather give that away to avoid taxes for now. And that's the whole, everybody who gives up a little liberty for security kind of thing. That's really kind of the analogy, or the that pops into my head on this. We'll give it to, we got to combine it, or you're going to have taxes. Here's the thing. Taxes are inevitable. Taxes in this state, based on the current trajectory of spending, the attitude of our elected officials, where we are in the state, the taxes, unless we change our spending habits, unless we change and challenge the size and scope of government, if that all remains the same, then taxes are inevitable. We may be able to put it off for another year or 5 years, or maybe even 10 years. If they combine the funds and they have access to all that corpus money, we might, we might be able to put it off for another 10 years. But that's how they're going to sell this to us. They're going to sell this to us as, well, do you want taxes, or do you want us to have access to the corpus? Because those are your two options. I mean, that's what's going to happen. And I'll tell you, there's not a politician out there over the last 25 years, a big government politician, who hasn't looked at that permanent fund and gone, oh, they haven't waxed their mustaches and gone, oh, look at all that money. Look at what we could do with that money. They see that permanent fund, and they're just like, there's so much good I could do with all that money. So again, this is the perfect storm set up by, and I don't know if it was intentional or planned or designed, but it's worked out that way, that it's the perfect storm of, we've got increased spend, we've got decreasing revenue, and we have that big juicy pot of money where they can continue to do the same. Because they're rapidly running out of road on the regular road right now of being able to continue this spend and everything else, because there's just not that many more pots of money to draw from. Right? And once the permanent fund is gone, then they're really going to run out of road. And it's coming to fruition. Again, a $2 billion deficit this next year alone. You can't fill the hole with all the stuff that they've got there. And so you look at that, you look at the whole Pikka thing, you look at this so-called renaissance on the North Slope. Is it really a renaissance? Are we going to, again, when we're looking at the fact that we're going to receive less and less and less money, and that even when it does even out 20 years down the road, because the fields by that time will be in decline, will still be flat or receiving less money overall as well. I mean, guys, I don't want to be doom and gloom, but somebody has got to wake up and smell the coffee. Anyway, it is what it is. All right, we're going to continue here. We got more coming up here in just a moment. Up next, we're going to talk for just a second about the governor's race. There was an interesting piece in KTUU, Alaska's news source, about the governor's race and the latest candidate for governor who's going to come on board. We will we'll continue this discussion here in just a moment. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Back with more after this.
Running on 100% pure beard power. Oh, also some coffee. We dip our beard in coffee.
Ha, nice beard.
The Michael Duke Show.
Okay. Let's go over here and see what you guys see what you guys have to say here. Sorry, I got a million. Sorry, I got a million messages here. All right. Let's see what else we got here. Melissa said, sounds like it's time to close some prisons and send prisoners out of state. I never understood why they wanted to stand up prisons inside the state of Alaska when they already had all those prisoners outside and being housed and I never understood that. Well, they need to be close to their family. Well, then they shouldn't have broken the law, right? I mean, it's just to me. I don't know. I never understood why they decided to stand up all these prisons and handle it in state when it was already being handled out of state at a reasonable price. Brian says you could just send them all to the Yukon Charlie. And Dave said, did you mean relocate the legislature? Close some prisons, send prisoners out of state. Oh, man. We'll see. And now Chris Hayes is quoting the Quant. He says the Quant says oil is at $9 a barrel in December. Everyone's leaving, just like 1989. Sorry, it's bad when your own chat room is quoting the resident troll as this is what we got going on. The state needs to stop all their spending, says Chris. Yeah, I mean the welcome to the party, pal. This is what I've been saying for years. But the thing what the thing is about free stuff though? Everybody loves it. Until they don't, until they figure out, until the music stops and then there's no chairs left. Almost out of water this morning. That's a bad deal. All right. Melissa says, amen. Amen. Fat Ray, he's got to be the freaking grammar Nazi this morning. The grammar police. Sorry. Sorry, Fat Ray. We all did. Some of us graduated from Lathrop, okay? We just didn't get the there. You know, the challenge on that. The there. Uh-oh. I just got a text message from the Alaska study industry. We should do a study about state spending. We here at the Alaska study industry can study it completely. For how much? How much, John? I just want to know how much could the Alaska study industries in the house doing their thing. Yeah, poor Lathrop. Did I tell you guys that I got an angry email because I made a joke about graduating from Lathrop High School and how, you know, I'm ignorant because I graduated from Lathrop. It was a self-deprecating humor, right? That's what it was. It was self-deprecating humor, poking a joke at myself, and some lady just read me the riot act. Turns out that she was a educator, school board member, anyway, she was mad that I made a joke about how I are a Lathrop graduate, and that's why I was just like, dude, it's a joke. Do you not get it's a joke? I'm joking at my own expense. Why are you? I'm already mad at myself. Why are you mad at me too? Anyway. All right. We're going to jump back into it. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Let's do it. Here we go.
I mean it. Public enema number one. Oh, wait, sorry. Enemy. Public enemy number one, which makes more sense. On the other hand, he's a little bit of a pain in the Michael Duke Show.
All right. Let's yeah, maybe I should have gone to West Valley. Anyway, welcome back to the program. Hello, my friends. Thank you for coming in and joining us on this beautiful Tuesday edition of the show. Somebody said earlier on in the room that they got snow on their front porch in Fairbanks today. Snow on the front porch in Fairbanks. It's 38 degrees here on top of the world in beautiful Homer, Alaska, and we're happy to be here and just be here and not be wherever you are with the snow or the rain or anything else. Anyway, it's just a beautiful another beautiful fall day, and we are continuing. Chris Story's going to be joining us here in one more segment, so I got one little 10-minute window here where we're going to pick up. We've been so busy with all the candidates and everything else. We really haven't had a chance to dive into some of the issues and talk about some of the different things that have been going on. I have to laugh because I'm sorry, I'm looking for Brad's Facebook page because he had a interesting there we go, right there. He had an interesting point. We're going to talk about the governor's race. And it was really interesting because Adam Crum, who is one of the latest, where is that post? Was it on X instead? You know, this is the problem. So many different social media platforms. I can't even pay attention anymore to where I found it. Here it goes. This is the report. So we've got the gubernatorial race, right? We've got the gubernatorial race going on. Now we have 10 candidates running for office, including the latest two entries, which was what we're going to talk about now, Adam Crum and Treg Taylor. And Adam Crum, he had a post on X a couple days ago that basically read he's actually put up a YouTube video called The Alaska Story, Adam Crum. I haven't watched The Alaska Story yet, so don't get me wrong. He says, I'm running to be Alaska's next governor to grow our economy, unleash our resources, defend our families, and support President Trump's America First agenda. Okay. And Brad makes the comment, a former state revenue commissioner who, during his term, not only failed to prioritize, but indeed undercut state revenue, leading to continued massive personal taxes disguised as PFD cuts on middle and lower income Alaska families. Oh, Lord, no. That's the thing. When you look at the track record, you're like, okay, how is this working out for us so far? You're going to grow our which economy, Adam? The private economy or the public economy? Right? The free market or the government? Which one are you going to grow? You're going to unleash our resources, defend our families, and support President Trump's. Okay, again, let's full stop. First question. How are we going to make it through the next 5 years? With $1.5 to $2 billion deficits for the next 5. How are we going to make it through the next 5 years? If you don't have a plan for that, if you don't have some details on that, it doesn't matter how many resources you unleash, because again, every one of those has got a 5-year minimum on the tail, right? On getting them set up. Any kind of scheme, 5-year minimum. How are we going to support? How are we going to make it through the next 5 years? That's the first question. So, yeah, no, I haven't watched Adam's story yet, but it's out there on YouTube. The Alaska Story. Adam Crum. Haven't watched it yet. I don't mean to mock him too much. It's hard to take people seriously when they come out of government, and not just out of like being a legislator or senator or, what, but when they come out of the administration and the Department of Revenue, not just coming out, the commissioner of the Department of Revenue, who's going to come in and say, I'm going to grow our economy. The track record, the track record ain't so good, baby. It ain't so good. And then we get this story out of KTUU. Former AG believes high-profile record provides advantage in crowded governor's race. Of course, we're talking about Treg Taylor. He sat down with Alaska's news source in his first media appearance since his announcement. And he said, it says he's making his argument to revitalize Alaska's economy and make it a place for future generations. And I'm just going to quote some of the stuff that he talked about here. We've got to create good paying jobs. We need an affordable, reliable source of energy and bring the cost of living down. And we've got to get Juneau working again, not just politics as usual. If we want our kids to be able to return and raise their families, we've got to fix those issues. Okay, so that's just the opening salvo. So let me break this down for you. And we're going to be doing this with every candidate out there. This is not just, it's just that Treg and Adam, both coming out of government, somebody who I see at this point as being kind of part of the problem. The irony of them saying, well, this now when I'm going to make a difference now. Okay. So Treg says we've got to create good paying jobs. First and foremost, when has it ever been government's responsibility to create government doesn't create jobs. Government needs to get the hell out of the way, right? The government's not creating any jobs. We need affordable, reliable source of energy and to bring the cost of living down. Okay, so again, government doesn't create anything. They are more a hindrance than anything else. If you want to bring the cost of living down, bring the cost of government down so people can save more money and have more money in their pockets. We've got to get Juneau working again, not just politics as usual. But again, both of you guys were part of the machine. So I'm trying so hard here. I'm just not buying this whole idea. He said, we're obviously going to have some big budget issues approaching the state as we've seen the barrel of oil price go down in price. That's not the budget issue is not created by the cost of oil. The big budget issues facing us is that we have spent too much. And now it's not the price of oil per se, it's that production has fallen off from where it was 15 years ago, and we've consumed all of our spending. Then he goes on to say, this is Treg Taylor, despite the decreasing price in oil, Alaska is on the cusp of renaissance. Again, I think Treg should watch a few episodes of Brad's show with us, because he would see that renaissance is not all that it's cracked up to be. But he said, he also said, we as Alaskans have to tighten the belt when the economy suffers. Baby, the economy has been suffering for a long time. And when have we ever tightened the belt? The private economy, the public economy is doing great. He also said the key to diversification is leaning into LNG. But we need to get this gas line. Oh, my God. Again, where is the costing? Where is the price estimate, the new updated price estimate because that's going to tell you whether this project is going anywhere. It was $44 billion 10 years ago. Where's the new price estimate? Nowhere. But people are still going to try and hang their hat on this? He said the gas line's so important to the state because without reliable, affordable energy, it really stifles the ability to increase business in the state. I mean, that's about the only thing that I agree with what he said today. Yes, reliable, affordable energy is really important. I think you'd have a better chance of actually building micronuclear reactors in all the major cities than you would of getting a gas line at this point. They did mention, of course, the controversy with him asking APOC to exempt him from disclosing certain things and everything else. He said it was a huge misunderstanding. And he said it's not about hiding information. It's not about not disclosing it. It's about the form of that disclosure. That's what he, goes on there. I don't know. There's a full podcast on this, and I'm going to sit down and listen to it and hear what he has to say. But again, I am not as excited about looking at candidates who are coming from deep inside government. And granted, that's mostly what you see when it comes to gubernatorial races, is you see people who have held other offices. But you got to be asking the question, if this is what you were all about, where was this fire while you were in office? I mean, I'll add, same question of anybody, Shelley Hughes or whoever else. Where was this fire to right the ship? And Shelley has some of that. She's fought to get she's fought to get a lot of that. But where was this fire, especially if you were in the bureaucracy, where was this fire ahead of that time? And I mean, even Bernadette Wilson, who I think is probably, in my opinion, my leading candidate amongst the field right now. She has some details, but in some areas it's just like, no. And she doesn't even want to talk about things like, should we talk about how a tax would fit into any, she doesn't even want to discuss that. Okay. That it is, that's what it is. 10 candidates, my friends. 10 candidates. Yeah, Brian just says working again. When Treg Taylor says he wants to get it all working again, that implied that it worked at one point. Yeah. Well, yeah, and if I hear how we need to unleash our resources one more time from any candidate, oh, we just need to unleash our resources. You realize that's not like turning on a switch, right? Right? But again, here we are. I mean, it's early times. We're still a year out from the primary. So we don't know where maybe they'll all come up with a detailed plan on how to fix it all. I don't know. We'll have to see. All right, I went too long. We got to go. Back with more. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. We'll continue right after this.
We're broadcasting live through a series of tubes,
allowing all of these entities to provide streaming stuff going on the internet.
Well, it's kind of hard to explain. Sorry. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Okay. Fat Ray just said, I was previously completely uninterested in voting for Bernadette, but after Michael said she wouldn't even say the T word, she has my curiosity. Okay. I mean, all right. You live in your world, my friend. You live in your world. Frank says more choices for governor is a bad thing. I never said that. How do you guys, it's such a straw man argument. I never said that. I never said that. Yeah. Is Bronson running for governor? Dave Bronson apparently filed a letter of intent. I don't know. That's just what we need is one more candidate, right? One more candidate. Today is not the day. I'm just, today is not the day. Tomorrow's not the day either. All right, let's go over here, and I think Mr. Story is ready for us here. Let's see if he is ready to join us here in the rest of the world. Let's do it to it. Hello, Mr. Story. How are you, my friend?
Oh, good morning, Michael. I'm ready to unleash the resources of this broadcast. I want to unleash the resources. Let's do it.
Yeah. Your house burns like any other, man. That's all I'm saying. Just like...
Hey, you said if one more person. Well, you did say candidate, so I guess I don't count. I was hoping that we'd like square off in town center or something today in fisticuffs. But anyway, fine.
I mean, come on, Chris. You tell me, is that not like, again, I think Brian said it's like one of the most cliched things. I mean, here we're going to unleash the resources. I mean, what does that mean? Right? I mean, first of all, it's such a bland statement. It's so blanket to begin with. But secondly, do they really think that they're going to get, some kind of big revenue push from opening up more resources even within their own term of 4 years?
Let's hope that it means this: working in concert with the Trump administration while it exists and while we have that kind of momentum to set us up for the next boom. And because I think it takes somebody that's willing to work, I think, in concert with that theory that it is underneath us. The answer is underneath. Like, the answer is not to tax each other. The answer is to develop what we've got, versus looking to each other going, okay, well, rather than, we were energy independent under the first Trump administration. That's who I would like, a governor who would admit that and say, we want to work again towards that effort, and Alaska can play a major role in it. That's what I would like to hear, versus we're going to create some sort of an institutionalized state income taxes, though that could even touch the quote revenue problem we've got, which you point out all the time is actually an expense problem. We're spending too much, not earning too little. And if you could balance all those things in a perfect candidate, I really do think it is Bernadette Wilson. You hit the nail on the head.
No, I mean, I think Bernadette has said more and laid out more than any other candidate. I don't always agree with her. I mean, we're going to have to, at some point, either there's two things we're going to have to do. We're either going to have to, you agree with everything she says. Okay, good.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to do one of two things. We're either going to have to cut back on the size and scope of government to live within our means, which there is no political will to do at this point, or we're going to have to find a new source of revenue to help pay for it all.
Yeah, and hence unleashing the resources.
Yeah, well, but again, how do we survive the intervening 7 years between now and when the resources are unleashed?
I think that same governor is going to have the control of the purse strings. The same governor that's willing to say, look, the answer is beneath our feet, but we also need to spend less. I don't know. I think it's a combination of that thing. But I did notice in the comments, somebody's promoting you for governor, Dukes for governor. I support your candidacy if so long as you commit to never institutionalizing an income tax in Alaska again. But I think that's just obvious.
No, because if I was governor, I would be voted out of office almost immediately because I would have put
impeached.
I would have been recalled. I mean, because my budget, I'd bring Donna Ardwin back and tell her, you know what you did last time? Go 3 times harder and let's put a budget together. And that's what I would do, and they would lose all their minds, and it would probably fail because no politician in the legislature would want to, cut $1 billion out of the budget, and I'd be back out on the street. So there you go.
Toast.
You wouldn't want me as a governor. I wouldn't be homeless, but there you go. All right, just you and the snoring dog.
There's 2 of them over there.
I can hear him
Charles Gimli Spaniel.
Snoring across the room. Okay, it's so cute. All right, here we go. We're going to continue. Chris Stories what are we talking about today? Quickly.
The price of luck.
The price of luck. Okay. All right. We're going to get into it. All right. Let's get to it. Here we go. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio.
The Michael Duke Show, proudly splitting the left versus right dichotomy. Yeah, I had to look that word up too. I don't think it means what he thinks it means. Here he is, though. That guy, Michael Dukes, the one with the show.
Okay, we're continuing on. One final segment. It's the uplift. This is the uplifting segment where we talk about positivity, which, my God, we need by now. Chris Story is the man from Homer, accompanied everywhere he goes by his two dogs. Can you hear it? Can you hear the dog? Wait. Yeah, so you hear that in the background? His 2 dogs in the background. Chris Story is going to talk with us today about the price of luck. Hit me with it, Mr. Story. Where are we at?
Bryce Pritchett wrote a little tiny book. He calls a guidebook or a manual, and it's called Lucky You. And I just reread it the other day. It's about a 35-page, maybe 40 pages of genius. And Price, just to give a little background, is from Texas, from the Houston area, and he's worked for 50 years in mergers and acquisitions. He's a psychologist who helps companies merge and come together and create a culture from more than one culture, sometimes 2 or 3 at a time. And so part of that is human observation and understanding, human nature, if you will. And so I started thinking about luck quite a bit and how a lot of times we'll ascribe to some successful endeavor a little bit of luck, a percentage of luck. Well, what is luck? So I decided to write a book about how to harness luck. And again, it's a short little read. And I just reread it the other morning. And I thought, there's a handful, maybe about a half a dozen things that really pop out at me that are worth sharing. And I think the first one is going to be no stranger to you and I. We've talked about this many times. Price says, luck starts with knowing what you want, to know what it is that you want and to write it down. He says that studies show, and this is across the board, if you write down your goals, aims, and ambitions, you increase the odds of delivering those results or something approximate to them by over 40%, just by the mere act of taking a minute and writing it down. And I think the corollary to that is that you keep it nearby. You don't just write it down and stick it in an envelope somewhere for a year. Although I think that has impact as well, just not as much as if you keep it nearby, review that goal, review that endeavor, what you've written down, but just even understanding, what do you want? I think a secondary question I would add to that is make sure you know why. Like when you answer the question of what, have a true conversation with your inner self about why. Why do you think you want that? Know that inside and out. And so that's step one, as far as I can see the price of luck. And two would be to reduce negative thinking. Reducing negative thinking, psychologists have noted and studied, actually is more impactful than increasing your positive thinking. You need both, but prioritization is reduce your negative thinking. And then secondary to that would be to create more positive thinking. But positive thinking alone will not overcome the negative self-talk and the doubts that already live and echo in your mind potentially.
So you need to know where you're going, and then you need to basically clean up your act. Yeah, what you want, where you're going, what you want, and then you need to clean up your act to eliminate the negative thoughts in what it's going to take to get there. In listen to stinking what.
It eliminates too strong a word, I think. I think reduce is the right word, because I don't think it's realistic to eliminate negative thinking. Even the most positive, optimistic, stage presenting, motivational speaker in the world, even that person who you know that you think is amazing, it still wrestles with negative thinking. So it's a matter of reducing. You're never going to put a chokehold in it completely. It's never going to be wiped out from your mind, probably. It's just, can you harness it? Can you reduce it down? Can you slow down the lemmings before they jump off the cliff? Those negative thoughts in your mind, can you just reduce them enough that then the positive thinking that you do enforce and reinforce in your life through mantras and in what you read and what you think about consciously will overcome the remainder, whatever's left over of those negative thoughts? Because doubt and shadows are always going to creep into your mind. I mean, it's unrealistic to think that they'll never come back. But these negative thinking, this can be even judgment of your friends and family. And you hear it. You just know when you're doing it. Like, hold on. Okay, let me stop that. Let me reduce my negative thinking about anything. Could be this major aim in life, or it could just be as simple as, why are they parked here, you idiot? It's not a parking spot, you more. Oh, there it is. So all of that, I think, fits under that umbrella of negative thinking. And if you can reduce it in your life, you're making room for the positive affects to take hold and maybe take up root. It's a little bit like weeding if you've got a garden. You're never going to stop the chickweeds, but you got to keep going back and weeding the garden. Otherwise, they're going to take over the strawberry plants and you're going to reduce your crop. So you got to plant the good things, plant the good seeds, but also go in and weed and reduce the negative thinking, or it's going to overtake it. And none of this is simple or easy, and it could even sound trite, and somebody saying, it sounds like a bunch of malarkey. Great. Don't do it. Don't introduce more luck into your life. It's okay. We're just talking to you that wants a little more luck in your life, or what could be looking like luck to those of us on the outside.